Welcome back to DevelopLex. Today we have a fun episode. We are doing a DevelopLex Roundtable. We did a couple of these last year. Really, the point of these is one, as most people know, Ross has kind of been back and forth on the podcast, but hopefully we get him in here a little bit more consistently now. But the thing is, Ross has a lot better takes and opinions than I do, so we had to make sure that
better is an adjective. I have hotter takes. I don't know that there's some of our listeners that they'll be like, Ross, why did you say that?
Gives him a platform to spew him on.
Until I run for city council.
Yeah, until he runs for city council. So the point of the DevelopLex Roundtable typically is with our podcast, we want to give our guests a significant amount of time. That's who we're interviewing, right? So we try not to talk about ourselves very, very much throughout. We try to keep it conversational, but at the same time, making sure that we give value to the guests. But I think this is an outlet to where hopefully we can maybe talk about some learnings that we've had over the last year, or try to give some sort of value or some sort of conversation as well. So we prepared a few questions, but really we're just going to keep it loose. So you want to start with a question?
Oh,
so or do you want to start with an intro? What have you been doing?
Well, Weston, I want to know about what you've been doing, because I feel like the past year you've just been hitting stride. So what's day-to-day look like in your world?
I asked you what you had been doing, but thank you for asking me.
You can ask me back.
So we thank you for asking, Ross. Then welcome back to DevelopLex. I've really focused a lot more on retail real estate. Well, first, my wife, Abby, she's an occupational therapist. We bought a house over on Southland Drive. That's great. I've been really into my grass and my landscaping. That's been what.
It's beautiful.
We've done a lot of home projects in the last year. So that would be first off. My wife, she's great. She's an occupational therapist. She just transitioned jobs. She's amazing. For me personally, like work-wise, we have rolled out a retail real estate services team effectively through SVN. So I was already doing retail real estate. I would say at least 75% of my business was that. This year, it's like 98%. And it was trending that way. And Nathan Dilley and I just kind of more officially said, like, hey, we're going to work together on stuff. It just makes more sense for us to be able to scale and help our clients better. And so we've just been doing a significant amount of retail real estate. So that looks like site selection, leasing, and disposition for shopping centers, or acquisition for shopping centers, a ton of site selection. Investment sales. We work with a lot of retailers on finding new sites. And I think something that's good and bad, and why I love DevelopLex, is it ties me to Lexington. A lot of our work is not in Lexington. A lot of it's kind of all over the state. Not to say we can't do stuff in Lexington. There's just only so much retail real estate in Lexington. So I would say that I've been moving around a lot more. Obviously Lexington is still home base. I go home and sleep in my own bed every single night, or for the most part. I'm going to Las Vegas next week for a conference, but I think retail real estate is the way to encapsulate what I've been doing, and just all facets of it. What about you? What have you been doing?
I've been tearing up the road between Atlanta and Lexington on I-75. Get to develop mixed income housing, really crazy high A++ apartments in some of the boom towns like Dallas, and working on some really big, really complicated projects. So almost 50 acres in Baton Rouge that's going to turn into being almost 500 units, and is going to be a beautiful mixed income intergenerational community that was previously wetlands that the Army Corps of Engineers owned. So the cap stack on it is nuts. It's complicated. It's risky, but if it happens, Baton Rouge is going to have a beautiful trophy. The other one is a really cool project in Carrollton, Texas. And Carrollton is a little suburb outside of Dallas that just gets it. They are they have a part-time mayor, they have a part-time council, but they hold a vision for 30 years and make things happen. They have practically made a land assemblage play over the past 30 years to make some really cool things over a 3-stage process that they're trying to increase industrial, increase residences, and then increase the wealth of the city after that. So it's a really cool economic development project that's in the form of real estate development. And those two have been keeping me busy. And then, just loving Lexington and trying to be here as much as I can be.
Yeah. Yeah, so that has looked like you driving back and forth a lot, is what you're saying.
A lot. my dog knows I-75 better than most people do.
That's awesome. Has that made you feel more excited about Lexington, less? I mean, obviously you've been moving around a lot. Like long term, what does that look like?
So I think all the Lexingtonians say, "Oh, I'm going to get out. Or they talk about getting out as this superior option. But there's such a high quality of life here.
You're saying like when you're young, like when you're...
Yeah. People in high school fantasize let's get out and go to college somewhere. People after college that have stayed here say, let's get out and
move to Nashville.
Heck, everybody moved to Nashville. And I think the quality of life isn't recognized early enough with the Lexingtonians, that there's such an incredible quality of life to just living here, being able to work here, the low stress of everything, but the high opportunity. And it's not the same in other cities. Atlanta's a little bit of a hellhole.
DevelopLex is sponsored by SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate, a full-service commercial real estate firm located in Lexington, Kentucky, affiliated with the SVN International Network, which is comprised of over 1,600 advisors and staff in 200-plus offices across the globe. The SVN Stone team consists of experienced commercial real estate advisors in the heart of the Bluegrass. SVN provides commercial real estate services to large corporations, middle market businesses, and individual entrepreneurial investors. Serving the greater Lexington area, SVN offers advisory services for sales, leasing, management, and development of commercial properties locally, regionally, and nationally. With transaction volume of over $400 million, the advisors at SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate have vast experience and deep understanding of all aspects of commercial real estate.
Yeah, but you're doing it, and you are now getting an experience that you wouldn't have been able to get in Lexington, and hopefully at some point being able to bring that wealth of knowledge back to Lexington. Is that fair?
Forget the wealth of knowledge. Let's bring the equity partners back.
That's awesome. So speaking of like what we're doing these days, if you were to get into the industry again, what do you think you would do?
So
not necessarily differently, but if there were steps to, make your life easier, or that you would advise somebody at 2 to do, now that you're an old man at 27.
So I get this question a lot, actually, that you have all these coffee meetings with people that are in university, just right out of school, whatever it is, trying to get their footing. And I would say, get your Excel skills up, get into pro formas, not just one pro forma, get into multiple different types, because running a pro forma is one of the ways that if you screw it up, you can screw up your deal for the life of the project. And really, like, it's so many people have different ways of running pro formas. Everybody has a different format of their model. Get as many people to share theirs with you as possible, so you can understand how they work. Because when you jump into a project, when you jump into a joint venture, when you jump into a job, and it's just a slightly different one, there's a learning curve. So get your footing on that quickly. I'm putting together a Notion doc, and here's an early announcement of all of the audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube videos, the downloads of checklists, things that you would need. I want to make this Notion doc more valuable than a semester of college and have that out there so that people that are early career commercial real estate have something that will just absolutely launch them forward. I will say, comparatively, Lexington to Atlanta both have strong universities, Georgia State in Atlanta, University of Kentucky in Lexington. We are behind in commercial real estate. We don't have a program of any sort of real estate in the state. Murray State was the last college to have any sort of formal real estate program. And other states are running laps around us. These Georgia State students are killing it. They're running their own brokerages in college. They are wholesaling. They are doing flips with investors. It is nuts what these folks are doing before they even have a diploma. And it's not because they have a commercial real estate program or a commercial real estate group. It's that they see what's possible. I think a lot of people in Lexington that go to UK, go to Transy, go to BCTC will be waiting for that diploma to get started. You can get started right now, and you should. It's cool.
Yeah.
What would you do if you had to get started again?
Well, I will say, I think there are people at Kentucky that are trying to get kind of a real estate program off the ground. We've been able to teach a few classes in the last year or so for Professor Sanders, Sean Sanders. I know Dave Blackwell is trying to get some stuff started. Lee Webb, our buddy Lee Webb, has led a commercial real estate program. And it's pretty amazing. And I think that what you say resonates with me, because it's pretty amazing that a lot of these students are like going to these classes for no credit, their workshops or their clubs or whatever. And they're doing a significant amount of work for zero credit because they want to be able to, like, nobody really introduced them to these things. But they want to be able to get internships at CBRE in Chicago or JLL or wherever, places kind of all over, maybe in their hometowns. For some reason, they had a connection to commercial real estate before, and they're like, I want to find something at UK that has that. So I know that we've had our first two like real estate classes, but something at Kentucky that really needs to change at UK in particular that I'd love to be a part of is like getting a more formalized program that gives people more formalized opportunities so that they don't have to seek it out themselves. I
would point out, one thing Lexington does have an advantage of is the kindness in the brokerage community, the openness in the development world. You can share comps, you can share experiences, you can offer referrals. And that's something that Lexington has this really nice undertone in their culture of that other cities don't have. And I'd like to just see that extend just a little bit further into how we can get more people into the industry, because we still have space. We still have space for hard workers in the commercial real estate world.
It's like when you're in the business, it's, you 100% the atmosphere. There's probably a lot of people that are in that culture that are listening to this, or hopefully there are. Shout out people in commercial real estate in Lexington. But it is a very, very much a community of kindness, which my principal broker told me like day one that was the case. Like, he was like, just call this guy to get some comps. He'll give it to you. He didn't care. I would say if I could do it all over again, or if I were to give advice to somebody starting right now, I think mentorship has been the biggest theme of my very short 5-year career stint thus far. I think really intentionally, and I did an okay job, but I think that if I were to start all over again, I would be like super hungry for it, is just like ferociously seek mentorship. I have several mentors in my life, but that's come through like osmosis and through just kind of being in the right place at the right time. I think that I would really aggressively seek mentors, because especially in a place like Lexington, there are so many people that are willing to give their time away, which is really one of the reasons we started DevelopLex, is because all these people were giving their time away, but we selfishly were taking it like just for one person. And so we decided like, hey, we could essentially record the conversations that we're having and give it to a lot of people. But I think that having a relationship and being able to bounce questions off of people that are 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead of you is something that I would, at 22, I didn't realize how open people would be to mentor me. And I think now at 27, that's something that I really enjoy, is when college students reach out to me. We taught a class 2 weeks ago, and it was great. I told them to follow me on LinkedIn and message me if they had any questions or wanted internships or whatever. And I had several reach out to me because I think that they were trying to find that, but they didn't know, how would they know about me if I didn't go into the class, And so I think that, people have to be somewhat aggressive in trying to seek that.
DevelopLex is also sponsored by Community Trust Bank. Hi there, this is Cam Dacey, Commercial Loan Officer at Community Trust Bank and avid DevelopLex and Middle Tech podcast listener. Community Trust offers a wide variety of home loans, commercial loans, and small business loans to suit your financial needs, as well as mobile banking, internet banking, and bill pay. Their friendly and professional staff would love to assist you at one of their 6 Lexington locations. Community Trust Bank is committed to building communities built on trust. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, subject to credit approval.
So one of my favorite questions that you always get to ask at the very end of the podcast is, what do you think Lexington needs? What do you think Lexington needs, West?
It's a loaded question. That's typical of people. Man, I don't know that I like being on this side of the question. Just kidding. I think I've got a lot of answers. I think that Lexington, I think there's a few things that are going to take a long time to change. One of those, I was just having a conversation with a developer yesterday that's trying to do some projects. And I think that through conversation, it's interesting. Me and my wife lead a neighborhood group through our church. And there's a guy in our neighborhood group, hopefully he's listening to this, that has been very self-educated on everything, new urbanism, walkability, infill redevelopment. And he's an engineer type of guy, but he's just passionate about it. And it's been cool because we've gotten to have conversations about some of those things from the perspective of somebody like me that maybe doesn't know a ton more, but at least works in it and gets to actually personally talk to a lot of people. And I think the notion, especially when you hear the word DevelopLex, is that we are just pure, we want to blow everything up and develop it and put a super target in the middle of downtown or something. I don't know what people think we want to do, but I think when you hear the name, you feel like we have an agenda when we really don't. We want to start conversations and cultivate community, or at least that's from my perspective. But I think it's been really interesting to be able to talk with him because it has made me really be reflective of a lot of the conversations that we've had. And I think that what people don't realize is that if you're not having conversation, you're not growing. And so trying to push one of the two or one of whatever by the amount of biases in terms of development is without hearing the other side of it. And as what I'm saying is really related to the urban service boundary, which is the biggest thing that every single person mentions. I think that we really need to promote a culture of talking and learning. And what people don't understand, and I was just having this conversation yesterday, and it was a project that just got shut down. I'm not going to say the part of Lexington, but it was a project it was an infill redevelopment project that got shut down by the neighborhood effectively. And they felt really excited about doing what a lot of people in the city want to do, which was higher density housing in an area that needed it, that had the availability to do it. The same people that want that, when it comes into their backyard, and I'm not trying to make a poke at NIMBYism or change the topic to something funny, but it's it's very true. It's when that conversation revolves around your backyard, then it becomes like, well, we don't really need infill redevelopment over here. We need it wherever. And oftentimes that looks like out. and so that's what happens. And so I think Lexington really, if I could change it, or if I could, I think it would be promoting the conversation of like, how are we actually going to move things forward if we're just moving the goalposts constantly?
Well, we have elevated the victory of the argument over the problem solving. If we can say, I'm going to problem solve land use rather than I'm going to win this argument about the binary expand, maintain, in, out, whatever it is, we'd be going places. And I think about it a lot where now you have so many levels of the development process where it's interesting. Wes Murray talks about how back in the old days, you'd go and say, I'm going to build this. You didn't even have to have architecture plans. You got maybe 1 or 2 approvals, and then you did it. Now you have ideas. You have the engineers that have to double check it for standards. You have to then design it. Then you have to get an approval from building inspection side of the city. Then you have to get a planning and zoning side of the city to approve it. And there's so many ways that you can have one dissenter and they win by saying no in that argument, versus we need to elevate the problem solvers of the city that are saying, hey, you might not want it in your neighborhood. They don't want it in their neighborhood. We need this here. And we have to have a strong enough vision to say, and this is why it's going to be better for everybody in the end. One of my favorite sayings is we get to make Earth a little bit more like heaven as a developer. And like we've just got to start problem solving. We don't have time to be fighting and arguing and thinking that a luncheon debate is going to solve our city's issues. We've got to start problem solving.
Sure, I think it's a good point. In what you said about not just wanting to win, which that's kind of like human sentiment typically, is like everybody just wants to win instead of solve the problem. But that's definitely I think that through a lot of the conversations we've had, it's not anybody on our podcast necessarily saying that they like need to win their side. I think everybody's kind of on the under the same pretense that like we need to solve a problem that's very much a problem right now, and it's going to continue to get worse. And honestly, we ask that question at the end and people start talking about the urban service boundary, and sometimes I'm even like, you don't have to. But I think that's a real problem, and something that, because it leads back to so many other so many different facets of growth within the city, because it's gonna, like, we're gonna continue to grow or we're not. And so I think that's the kind of scary part. I didn't even know I didn't read that question ahead of time, so I didn't even know that's where I was going to go with that answer. So
Craftsman Contractors is Central Kentucky's one-stop shop for roofing, windows, siding, and gutters. craftsmancontractors.com/contact us will get you straight to the form you need so that their team will get in touch about your project. Or just text Steven at 859-246-0108. When they finish your project of windows, siding, gutters, or roofing, you'll see what they mean when they say we build with integrity.
I guess that was on my heart. What about you?
What's the question?
How can Lexington change for the better?
Oh my gosh.
Is that what you asked me? I don't remember.
Yeah, gosh. Lexington needs more visionaries that are going to actually do something. We don't have a path forward right now from a city in terms of a master plan or an identity that everybody is behind. It's really cool that you go into some of these cities and they are saying, we are going to be a top 10 city in this metric by this time. And that's everybody from the server that knows that when you go and visit one of these towns to the mayor. We don't have that set vision that has buy-in. And if we can say, look, we want to host the equivalent of another World Equestrian Games. We want to be the place that every 20-year-old dreams of going to college and also stays there after, talking about town and gown kind of relationships. Or we want to be the best 320,000 person town, and no more people are allowed to cross the border to come in after. Like, come up with an identity and stick to it. Austin's weird. Miami is going to be the new New York. Like, you can start rambling off all of these new city identities. What are we? We're a cool place to visit in April and October.
Yeah, I think with that, I think we all know that there's a lot of potential. Talking to the Bluegrass Hospitality Group guys yesterday, the day before, whenever that was, it is really neat that a brand like that travels so much and is always looking at new cities to expand into. Like, they very much beat the Lexington drum, which was amazing to hear. I think what you're saying, though, is correct. It's like, we all know that we have a lot of good adjectives about our city and a lot of good experiences, but if we don't really define that moving forward, I think, and I think that's part of what I talked about as well. I think that's like a big part of it, is where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Wes talked about it on his podcast. The vision is led by the private sector right now. And I'm not saying that it should be led by the public sector. It needs to be led by everybody. If we can't get everybody on board, talking about how the development process is just so complicated that one dissenting level can throw off hundreds of thousands of dollars in pre-development, we have to start claiming an identity of some sort and acting on it. And that's something that Lexington used to have. There was so much excitement when the Jefferson Street corridor was blossoming, when the North Lime night market days were taking off, when Distillery District had that grassrootsy feel. We don't have a district in Lexington that's in that new, exciting, momentous moment right now. And we need that, and we need the banks on board. We need the creative engineers to be on board. So that's something downtown even used to have. There was a bank that would offer a really great rate for some of these projects that met the larger vision of what downtown should be. And that's what a true local bank that has the power of a purse can do. And I hope that we get some people creative and think about that again too.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully, conversations like this are really where that starts. And so I think the hope through podcasts and the hope through just like being in the industry is to be able to create a space for those conversations to actually happen. Because if you're not talking about things, then they're not ever going to happen. If you're not talking about, or if you're not conversating and hearing the other side and getting new perspectives and traveling new places and all of the things, you're not going to grow in the way that you want to grow.
Travel to new places and talk to old people. That's what we need to be doing, is because Lexington, if we keep talking to the same people that are in our 10 years of life, we're going to have the exact same answers. We need to be taking trips to places. That's one of the reasons why the Commerce Lexington trip has been so powerful, and 100 people go every year to one of these new cities to find the best of the best, and try to bring it back to Lexington. We need that. We need that on a smaller scale, where five folks grab a broker, a banker, a developer, an engineer, and a fun person. Because we can all get too much into the weeds of a project if we don't have that one fun person. Let's go to Cincinnati. Let's go to Knoxville. Let's go to Nashville. Let's go to Greenville and say, look at that. What if we brought that back? And then also talk to the old people. Like, back in the 80s, when Lexington was booming, we were building towers. We had outside money coming here. Let's talk about that. let's talk about why that was happening. Let's talk about what it was like for the macro community when IBM was here, growing into Lexmark, how life insurance money shaped the way that downtown's skyline was made.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think that is probably a good stopping point for us on this episode. I want to call to action, though, coming out of this episode. I think something that Ross mentioned right there was the 5-person group going to a new place. I think it would be really neat and come to our happy hours and talk to us or whatever, reach out to us on LinkedIn. I think it would be really neat to just create a community within Lexington of people that care. I mean, that's the hope, right? And through that, I really want to continue to emphasize, especially this season as we're getting into a lot more community cultivation type guests and conversations, that we would love for you to reach out to us, and whether that be just have a conversation over coffee or say hey, let's go to, you should look more into Tulsa. You should look more into Oklahoma City. Look at this thing that they have going there that me or Ross may have no idea that we can learn about. And hopefully we can either use it in our work or we can talk about it on an episode and get things stirring. Yeah. Tulsa might not have been the right example.
No, Tulsa has a really cool Tulsa remote program. They are trying to be one of the locations that if you're a remote worker, you can choose anywhere to go there. They have really cool people doing really cool things in development too. Tulsa has a development program where they take people through a 6-month project that says, hey, you want to get into development? Okay, get into groups of 3. We have some lots. We have some plans that have already been approved. We're going to get you, and we have a bank that's partnered as a part of a Community Reinvestment Act eligible project. These people go from never knowing any real estate to developing a house in the urban core in 6 months. That's what other programs, other cities are doing. Tulsa is a great example of that.
Wow. Kudos to me. When I said Tulsa, I wasn't joking, but I just pulled out a random city. So yeah, I'd say call to action from that. Would love to have more conversations with people that actually listen to the podcast and care. I think it's really unique when I talk to just a random person that comes up to me in a Starbucks when I'm getting my coffee and is like, hey, I listen to DevelopLex. I have no real estate experience. I do have opinions. Let's talk. We would very much encourage that. Would be my call to action out of this episode. So again, the roundtable format is just to maybe be able to be more conversational, less questions based, more talky. And we're going to continue to do these over time. So before the next episode, give Ross and I some topics that you want us to talk about.